Ryk, I believe, is coming back up to do some further presentations. So if you can please welcome Ryk to the stage. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome back after coffee or tea. Okay, I'm going to talk about the key responsibilities of a treasurer. You've got a job, now what? What I'm going to talk about the high-level responsibilities. If you want a bit of ins and outs, there's a really good resource on our community website called Good Damn Advice. Damn Good Advice for treasurers, 25 questions a not-for-profit treasurers need to ask. So that's a pretty good resource, but that's very practical. So what does a treasurer need to do? You need to ensure that accurate financial records. So the treasurer needs to ensure that all financial transactions are recorded. They need to ensure that the information to supply the board with reports is easily accessible from the financial system, whatever system they use. They need to ensure that all payments are made by authorised persons and only up to the level of expenditure, as well as need to be the necessary systems and procedures in place to ensure that all financial transactions are recorded. The treasurer also have statutory obligations. They need to ensure that either they themselves or the bookkeeper or accountant lodge the business activity statements and the instalment activity statement with the ATO. If they're incorporated association, annually they need to ensure that the annual statement is lodged with the Consumer Affairs Victoria, if they are registered in Victoria. If it's a company limited by guarantee, they need to ensure that the accounts are lodged with ASIC. If they are required to lodge accounts with ASIC, or if they are registered with the ACNC, it needs to be lodged with the ACNC. And if they are registered with the ACNC, they also need to ensure that the management details are up to date and that the annual annual information statement are lodged on time. That's normally 6 months after the year end. The third responsibility is financial management. So the treasurer needs to prepare a budget so that they can track the operations of the business. Unfortunately, the treasurer doesn't have a crystal ball, so they need the help of management and other staff members to ensure that the budget makes sense and that it's available for approval by the Board of Committee when it's ready. The treasurer also needs to understand if there are variances between the actual and budgeted numbers, go back and investigate why that is happening so that they can explain that to the board when they do the reporting to the board. And that's the fourth main responsibility, reporting to the board. As discussed before, they need to be able to explain to the board any variances between the actuals and the budgeted numbers. They need to report on specific projects or cost centres, anything the boards previously were interested in knowing and seeing what's going on. They also need to know what is the cash position of the organisation at the time of reporting to the board, as well as what is any future expected expenditure that may come through. The board, they need to ensure that the reports to the board are it's easy to explain and to understand. It needs to be clear, so I think the thing to do nowadays is to have a bit of like a reporting dashboard which contains the key numbers which the board would be interested in, as well as some of the more detailed information at the back of that if anybody wants to go into more detail. But that's a good way just to get to the crux of the matter. It also needs to be accurate and timely. There's nothing worse than something that's not on time. And the purpose of this report is to allow the board to make decisions about allocating the resources of the organisation. Of course, the fifth responsibility is working with the auditor if this organisation needs to be reviewed or audited. And the treasurer needs to work with the bookkeeper, accountant, or other accounting staff to ensure the auditor's got all the information. It's always a good recommendation that a year-end audit file are prepared to ensure that all accounts are reconciled and all the balances is correct. So always a good thing to look at the balances and ask yourself, does this make sense? Should it be there? And do you have supporting documentation for that balance? A lot of the time, the quality of the accounting records will have an impact on your audit fee. Another responsibility of the treasurer is to help prevent fraud. In most cases, prevention is the cure and not trying to find out what happened after the fact. I'm aware that in smaller organisations, the fact that you don't have a lot of people in the accounts department or not even a lot of people in your organisation makes the segregation of duties really difficult. But in a perfect world, you need to have different people receiving the goods than those that authorise or purchase the goods, as well as different people receiving the money from the people that does the actual entry in the financial statements. All payments by cheque or EFT should have at least 2 authorised people that authorise that payment. Should never sign a blank cheque, and shouldn't let your login and password really be known to anybody else. I've been to clients where there was lovely signed cheques lying on a desk, so that does tend to happen, even if you think it doesn't happen. Anybody that deals in cash and a significant amount of the organisation's business should have a criminal records check, and you need to, part of your induction of your new staff and volunteers, you should talk about fraud prevention measures and internal controls. Unfortunately, there's some risk to being an auditor, which is why, auditor as well, treasurer. You can actually, that's why you can't find somebody to fill the position a lot of the time. There's a problem that the organisation can be trading insolvent. There's a risk that you're sitting with an experienced board that can have an impact, make bad decisions that can impact on the finances. You may find that a time commitment for being a treasurer can exceed what you expected, and it can be quite a full-on job depending on the size of the organisation. And you also, once again, need to stress that the employment entitlements need to be accurate, because that's the real sleeper of what I can see from a lot of organisations. So in short, that was a really quick one. So treasurer is responsible for keeping the operations finances on track. The treasurer basically need to set out achieving the defined goals, as well as not putting the organisation or themselves at risk. The treasurer will be expected to safeguard the assets of the organisation, oversee the financial administration, as well as ensure that the internal controls are reviewed. They are basically responsible for the financial strategy of the board, as well as to prepare the annual budget in cooperation with the board members. And sometimes they are responsible for doing grant proposals to generate funds for the organisation, but hopefully that's more like the work of a subcommittee. Is there any questions for me about the role of a treasurer? Yes, sir.
We've been running a system just with cheques, which has worked well, sort of having 2 signatories to the cheques. We're now being forced to go into electronic banking with the superannuation stuff and things. We can't make those payments by cheques anymore.
Yes.
I was just wondering whether you've had any experiences people have had sort of with electronic systems, with having 2 people needing to approve. Do people have problems with that? Or
Well, you just need to be you basically need two people that are not going to be away all the time. The people that are going to be available. So somebody that an organisation trusts and a board trusts that are going to be available, that you don't have to say, okay, this is overseas this week and that type of thing. It worked pretty well. You get somebody like the bookkeeper or the accountant to set up the payment. Then you've got board member A to authorise payment, and the accountant needs to send that documentation to both board members so they can see what are they paying. And then A authorise and B authorise. There's a lot of the time we find that some organisations got a real complex process of getting payments authorised, and that all payments need to be authorised by the board. So I think the best is to basically move away from that, still be accountable to the board and say, listen, this is the payments we made this month, but only, let's say, the accountant sets it up and the treasurer and somebody else signs it off, but everybody knows what's being paid, but you don't want everybody to say, okay, no, it's okay to pay, okay to pay. That's really put a lot of red tape into that. That answer your question? Any other questions? Yes?
Some of the problems that you've illustrated is about employee entitlement accruals.
Yes.
What are examples of best practice that you've seen?
Well, the best practice is to do your payroll correct. A major problem we find is that there's not enough attention being paid to that. So you don't have complete records, or the person that's been there so long and nobody really knows what's going on. So it's a bit of can be a bit of a minefield. So the best practice is to make sure your payroll is calculated correctly. A lot of the time people say, okay, I'm not calculating the long service leave using my payroll system. So the thing that you may get out of it is your annual leave and your personal carers and sick leave. But your long service leave can be calculated externally to an extent, but to get that information right in the first place is a challenge. I think you'll find that. Any other questions? Look, yes.
Treasurer is being diligent, such that the board or someone's fraudulent. What strategies has the treasurer to report to the propriety or the CEO? Who do they go to? The people they report to are the problem.
Well, that's a good question. They probably then need to go to the rest of the board, not to that specific board member, and then put down the evidence. Because a lot of the time it's your trusted employees that helps themselves, and that can be a problem. Yes?
Do you expense your personal leave even though it's not invested entitlement?
Like I said before, the risk is that you're going to end up in a situation where somebody... the easy solution is, let's say you end up in a situation your staff needs to be taken over by somebody, you can just sack everybody and re-employ them. That will take care of that problem. But in theory, there's a lot of people that doesn't do it. So you don't have to. So
we do it, but I got told when I was going to take it to the auditor that he wouldn't audit my books if I had expensed my personal leave provisions every month because it's not vested.
Well, I think it's good practice to have it in there. I like to see it in there. And if you look at it and you say, okay, historically we only paid out 50% of our sick leave in the next year, it's always good to make that provision, because otherwise you're probably not reporting accurate numbers to your board or your members.
If you have someone to take over extended sick leave and you've got actual money until you can help with that.
Yeah. Now, you're going to take a hit at some stage because people block it up pretty easily, especially if people have been a long time. So it can happen. They can be off for 3 months and you just have to pay it. So that's the risk, that you're not going to maybe have to put that money aside to pay that if you haven't provided for it. Yes, sir.
Fair Work Australia say you can cash out your annual leave, but you've got to leave 4 weeks in there.
Okay. Okay, I'm not aware of that, but yes. Okay.
By agreement.
Okay. Yeah, that's always basically if the employee wants to do that, then yeah, that you can do that. I mean, a lot of people pay out sick leave if the staff don't take the sick leave, so it just depends on what's been agreed. Anything else? Derek, do you want to come and say a few words about the duties of the legal duties of a treasurer? There's no slides for that. He's going to make a few comments. Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, everybody. Just a very brief comment. Ryk has walked through many of the expectations of treasurers, and I just want to remind you back to my first the morning presentation about the statutory contract, the constitution or the rules of your organisation. And sometimes you will see specific duties spelt out for the treasurer to maintain and keep financial statements to present a true and fair value, etc., certification of financials at the AGM and certain things. But these are binding on the treasurer. It's part of the statutory contract, and if they haven't done that, you could say that they haven't fulfilled their contractual duties to the association. Now, hopefully the duties aren't onerous, but I've mentioned in some of the cases this morning, the Berry Club case and the Anandamaga Prakaraka Samha case, how basically the books of account were kept in a reasonably accurate position, but it wasn't for the treasurer to make a determination whether, in the case of Berry Club, that the company was insolvent. That was a responsibility for the board as a whole and not a responsibility for the treasurer. So it's important to distinguish between the responsibilities of the treasurer per se, under their respective legislation and constitution, and the responsibilities of the wider board when looking at accounts. I'll just give a quick story again. Stories seem to be the flavour of my presentations. I started out, and this is a story really to say it's so important to get independent advice because that will actually protect you as a treasurer. I started out in the late 80s with a land care group. I was voluntary secretary of it. The first couple of years we received a little bit of income through sale of tree seedlings and through the $10 annual subscriptions. So it's a fairly easy financial recording through Quicken that the bookkeeper was able to, or treasurer was able to keep. But that was also the decade of land care, and the federal government was throwing an enormous amount of money at very small not-for-profits, including our association. And all of a sudden, members were saying, wow, we're making a profit, we're making a surplus. As literally tens of thousands of dollars came into an association that previously had been lucky to have $1,000 coming in. And it was necessary at an annual general meeting for the accountant. The treasurer sought advice from the accountant how to present, and the accountant's letter was read out to explain that this grant money shouldn't be recorded as income. It should be recorded as a liability against the expectations of the funding bodies. And once you were able to separate, and I'm not an accountant or providing advice on how to treat these things, but it was important for everyone to understand, and for the treasurer's role, perception, if anything, within the organisation, to have an independent expert, an accountant, providing some advice to everybody about how the financials should be kept. It's all very well to expect a treasurer to present financials that are true and fair, but what is true and fair when you're dealing with membership income and government grants? So presenting that in a way with the benefit of an independent expert helps to not only the treasurer discharge their own duties, but also helps avoid the perception that the treasurer is either incompetent or perhaps something much worse. Transparency of process is what it's all about. That's my comments. Thank you.